Welcome to the HubSpot Happy Hour, the official HubSpot podcast by Digital Reach. So the first half of our content today is going to be devoted to business process automation and RevOps and how HubSpot can build long-term solutions for your business. And then we'll take some time to solve real-life problems in HubSpot and show you how to power up your sales process with the quote tool and approval workflows. I'm Kayla. I'm your DR podcast host. And today, of course, I am joined by none other than our very own Mandy Thompson, our HubSpot hero, founder, and the CEO of Digital Reach.
Thanks for having me, Kayla. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited because I get to work with you every day, so I know that you're a wealth of knowledge. I've learned a lot in the year that I've been working at DR. And so, who better to kick off our podcast than with you?
Well, I'm glad our segment is first, although I would be happy to be second or third. But I think it's nice to dive in and show people some of our skills and some of our knowledge and how we do things.
Absolutely. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? We're going to do a Q&A portion that we've prepared for you today. And then if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to leave some time at the end to answer some as we can. And we'll do our Q&A between Mandy and I now, and then we'll hop into the live demo. So, Mandy, the first question that I have for you is, what is the difference between business process optimization and automation versus RevOps?
Yep, that's a great question. And I wanted us to talk about this topic before we jump in and to kind of kick off this podcast in general, because we hear a lot about HubSpot being discussed as this great revenue operations tool, and it is. But revenue operations is such an ambiguous term and can cover so many things and mean so many things. And I think that we can lose focus on all the things that HubSpot can do when we're just focused on revenue operations. So is HubSpot a great home to align your teams around revenue? Yes, you can get the visibility. We can have automations that help all of the teams connect and communicate, give them the visibility of data so that they can be focusing on the same goals, metrics, OKRs, etc. But there's so much more that HubSpot can do when we look at business process automation. And some of those process automations do have to do with revenue operations, but some of them don't. And we don't want to rob those who are not at the place to, have revenue operations as a way that their business functions. We don't want to rob those people of the opportunity to automate, streamline, and optimize business processes, handoffs, and all of those things inside of HubSpot. So that's why I personally like to focus on business process automation rather than just focusing on revenue operations, because you could have revenue operations inside of business process automation and optimization, but revenue operations is not required for that, right? So to me, the lowest common denominator, which is what I like to focus on, is the business process automation and optimization. Because whether you're a RevOps organization or whether you're still siloed and working in that direction, the solution works for you either way.
Absolutely. So I guess, what would you say in terms of if people are trying to take a look at their business and whether they're doing RevOps or optimization, why HubSpot? Why do you think HubSpot is the best tool for this?
Yep, that's a great question. The reason I think that HubSpot is the best for revenue operations as well as business process automation and optimization is because of how powerful the tool is. I know I just did a series about why HubSpot, and the first two things I talked about are custom properties and workflows. Because with those two tools, you can pretty much condition and automate just about anything. So it's not only that we can automate when this happens, do that. We can condition so many things around when we trigger that action, and then have if-then branches and condition the variables or properties for how we are going to act, and acting on that trigger in different ways depending on the value of those data points. And so that allows us to have very powerful automation. And then when you look at the 1,000+ integrations that HubSpot has, as well as the operations hub that allows us to deploy webhooks to connect to tools that don't automatically or don't natively integrate, as well as Python and JavaScript-based workflows, all of a sudden we really can do just about anything when it comes to business process optimization and automation. And we have found that on average, we save the average person who is using HubSpot and leveraging these automations a minimum of 15 to 20 hours a month, and we have saved teams up to 40 hours a month. So when you think about that, That's an entire extra week of productivity on non-menial tasks that you can see your team get. And your team is happier, because who likes doing repetitive tasks that don't challenge us? I mean, once in a while, right? Like, we're tired and like, I just don't want to focus right now. But overall, humans are happier when we're being challenged.
Absolutely. And I mean, just being able to see like the weight lifted off of our clients' shoulders when you're able to take away all of that time that's just wasted doing things that you can automate, that's been really cool for me to be able to see on our end. And so I guess in that case, so RevOps does have a role in business process optimization and automation, but it's not required. So how would a company choose what path that they should go on?
No, great question. And they can choose. The nice thing is, you can choose RevOps with business process optimization and automation, or you can just choose the business process one. So if you're deciding whether RevOps is right for you right now, I would just take a look at a few things in your organization. Do you have an objective around aligning marketing and sales and service, or at least marketing and sales, right? Because RevOps should be your entire front office, but many organizations start with their marketing and sales organizations first and then work on bringing in their customer success and customer service. So regardless of how you're approaching it, I would first take a look at, number one, is your company already having conversations around this? Is this a topic that people are already open to? How well does sales and marketing work together now? Do you have goals that align for both? Or are you caught in the old way of doing things where marketing's goal is around MQLs, sales goal is around revenue or closed opportunities, and you have friction there because marketing could hit its goal, and marketing hitting its goal could potentially hurt sales hitting its goal if those MQLs are of low quality and they're being judged at how much they convert MQLs into opportunities. And so, like, where is your team at with that? Are they ready for those conversations? Or are they already having them? If not, if there are friction points, there could be for a number of reasons. We have to remember that for decades and decades, sales and marketing have operated as two completely separate functions within a company. And the view on marketing has only been changing in the last 5 or so years to see the value that marketing can bring to revenue. And especially when we look at, like SaaS companies, agencies, and that kind of stuff, we're all in this world where we're thinking about that all the time and we're there. But when we focus on, manufacturing, education, industry, transportation, industries that are well established, that means they've been doing the thing they've been doing for a long time. So it's often there that we see a little bit of a slower transition. So I would say, if your organization doesn't seem ready for RevOps, start with business process automation, get everybody into HubSpot, increase that visibility, because then that will lay the groundwork to have a RevOps conversation if you're not ready for it yet.
Absolutely. And I've seen firsthand where, because coming from the background that I had, I didn't know a lot about HubSpot. And so I've been able to see how it's so user friendly and how you can automate things. And it's just one simple source of truth where, I can start something and I don't have to worry about, there's no lack of communication. Everything is housed within HubSpot. All of the information is there. And especially if you're putting things into workflows and everything is done automatically, I mean, it leaves so much more room for all of the other stuff that you can do to scale your business and to make it that much better.
Absolutely. Rather than focusing on all these manual tasks, you can be segmenting your list better and personalizing the journey with smart content and focusing on that type of strategy rather than manual data upkeep or other things that take people's time. So yeah, I agree 100%.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you and I could definitely go back and forth on all of the things that we love about HubSpot, and I know we wanted to leave some time for questions after we do our live demo. Is there anything else that you think we should cover real quick before we do hop into the live demo?
You know what? The only thing that I would say to people is that if you're just getting started with this, spend time in the HubSpot forum. There are a lot of wonderful contributors there who will answer your questions. We release content every single day on how to do things in HubSpot. So follow our company page. You can follow me, follow Kayla, follow Karen Sinet, follow Stepan Gurchik, whoever you would like to follow. And Stepan, I think I just butchered your last name because I was trying to overdo it. So Jen's going to laugh at me for that later, for sure. And I apologize, but follow these people to go ahead and get information regularly and then learn the workflow tool really well, because what you can do with that tool is so powerful. And we're going to give you a sample of that today, as Kayla suggested. So in the future, what this show is going to look like is us solving a problem that we've seen and then solving your problems that you submit to us. And depending on how long it takes to solve them, we might solve 1, 2, or 3 a week. So please follow us. Let us know the problems that you want solved so we can do those live in the future. But you're going to get to see today in this these approval workflows for the quote tool, you're going to get a nice sample of how flexible we can be with HubSpot. So Kayla, I'll go ahead and let you kick us off as we get over into this demo, and I'll get my screen share set up.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to jump into the demonstration and show everybody how to use the approval workflows in HubSpot and then supercharge everything with multiple rounds of revisions, multiple approvers, and everything else. So very cool that we'll be able to show you live on screen how to do this. And again, if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat. I'm going to try to keep track of those and then see if we can cover some of those here at the end.
It's our first time doing this live, and so for anyone listening, we're very sorry, but we will get this figured out because where there is a will, there is a way. So let me think here on a solution. While we're talking, while we're doing that though, I'm going to try to multitask. So here's what we're going to go over today. So with the quote tool, you can turn on approvals, right? So that's fun. But even more fun than that is taking a look at when we do have those approval workflows set up, taking a look at how we can, how we can use them in new ways, right? So you automatically, when you turn it on, you get 3 workflows, right? So you get a workflow for when you need to get approval, when feedback has been submitted for the approval to tell the person who made the quote, and then to mark the quote as approved once it's been approved. And so those are the workflows you get out of the box. But what if you have multiple rounds of revisions? Or what if you have multiple approvers on your quote? Or what if you want to make sure that sales actually sent the quote out? That's what we are going to cover here today. So let me go ahead and see if I can get my screen share to work one more time. And it appears that it still does not want to work. So let me do something real quick. Kayla, I'm going to send you a link.
Okay.
And we're going to see if we can get your screen share to work.
Okay.
And see if that's the issue. And then if not, we'll go from there. But fun stuff, fun times. And let's see what we can do here.
There we go.
All right. So here we go. So what I'd like to talk about first, so we have an order of operations here. Okay. So like I mentioned, the first thing that you want to do, so Kayla, if you can actually go to your tab on the right that has settings, let's go ahead and start there. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to, not on that one though. Sorry. Go back on that tab. Okay. Sorry. See, look at where, so your tab all the way to the right that says settings.
Oh,
that's already settings. Open. Yep, there we go. Exactly. So what we're going to do, actually go to the one to the left of that. My apologies.
Okay.
All right. So go ahead and X out of that, please. And then what we're going to do is on the left-hand side, go to objects. So first thing we got to do, folks, is we got to turn on that we're going to have approvals for our quotes. Okay. So you'll go to objects, you'll go to quotes. Okay. So then what you'll see is go to, okay, well, I've already turned it on. So could you please go to customized quote templates? Okay, we have those there. And give me 1 second because I already turned this on. So let me figure out how to show people how to turn this on since we've already done it. So give me 1 moment. My apologies, folks. All right, so.
Oh, is it because I'm logged into my account, you think maybe?
Nope, it's, you know what? It might be. So I'm sorry about that, y'all. Kayla does not have the access. So here's what you're going to know. Where Kayla's at right now under setup, quotes and setup, if you have the permissions, you'll see something that says require approvals on all quotes. When you turn that on, then HubSpot is going to automatically create some workflows for you. Okay, so if you go to the setup tab real quick, Kayla, right over there, if you have the right permissions, what you're going to see there is an option to go ahead and turn on and require approvals. And I can't show it to you right now, like I said, because my internet's being not good and I can't share my screen. Okay, so then what happens when you create this, if you can go over to your far left tab, Kayla, for workflows, HubSpot's going to automatically create 3 workflows for you, okay? So the first one it's going to create, if you could scroll down just a little bit, Kayla. Okay, so right there where it says when quotes require approval, when changes are requested on a quote, and when quotes are approved. Those are the 3 workflows that HubSpot's going to create for you, okay? So let's go ahead, the one you're hovering right now, Kayla, please go ahead and click and open that one up. So the very first thing that's going to happen is we are going to have that when a quote approval status is any of pending approval, okay? So that's going to be the trigger for this one. Now, we can only automatically enroll anything into a workflow once for the most part. And so we can leave that automation trigger alone because we'll have other conditions for future ones, right? And so today we're going to go over how to deal with the second or third round of revisions, which makes me want to, in this first one, not only say that it's in pending approval status, but also say that it's never been in rejected status. So we know that it's the first time. But we don't actually have to do that because this will trigger the first time the quote needs approval, and then it won't trigger the second time. Our workflow for the second time, which we'll get into in a minute, will trigger. Okay, so then what you're going to do, you're going to set who your quote approver is. We're going to show you later how to do this if you have multiple approvers, and how to do this if there are multiple people who could be the approver and you have conditions for choosing which one is the approver. Okay, then what we're going to do is create a task, do an approval request, and we're going to use the token to plug in the quote title and assign it to the quote approver. And so HubSpot gives you that workflow out of the box. That's going to assign approval and create a task for the approver, okay? So then Kayla, if you could go back real quick, the next one that if you just go back to work, go back to that and the back to workflows, exactly. So then what you'll do, this is great because this is just like if someone is like newer to HubSpot. I know you've worked in here a fair amount, but not in these functions. Okay, so now what we're going to do when changes are requested on a quote, this is the other workflow that HubSpot's going to give you automatically. So if we could go ahead and click on that one and open it. So then what this is going to trigger based on is when the quote status is rejected. So when I go into, and I'm going to show you this in a moment. So first we're looking at the workflows. Then we're going to look at how you interact with the quote and the tasks that are assigned based on those workflows, okay? So when the approval status is any of rejected, then what's going to happen is we're going to create a task, changes requested, and plug in the quote title, and the quote owner, who is the deal owner is automatically the quote owner, no matter who makes the quote. They're going to get a task that says, go in and make these changes, okay? So that's what's going to happen then. And then if you do the back to workflows button again, Kayla, the last workflow that HubSpot gives you out of the box is the when quotes are approved. So if you go up a little bit, a couple more. There we go. And this says with follow-up, y'all. The name of the workflow that HubSpot gives you automatically is going to be called when quotes are approved. I added a with follow-up that we're going to go through a little bit later to make sure that sales actually sent this quote out when it got approved, okay? So when quote status is any of approved. So when you as an approver review the feedback and hit approved, the quote status will update. When that quote status updates, that's going to trigger this workflow, which is going to say quote approved with the title and a task, and ask the quote owner to make sure they get it sent out, okay? Now, we're not going to get into that 4-hour delay quite yet because we're going to take a look at that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and go back to workflows real quick. So now what we want to do is if you could please go, Kayla, to the quotes, your middle tab that says quotes. So let's take a look at quotes here. So I created some quotes this morning specifically to be able to run through this, okay? So let's take a look at a couple of different ones. Number one, the test deal quote has changes requested, okay? So if you, if you go back real quick, that's all right. So if you hover that and go to the actions button, then there is a link to that quote. Okay, we don't need to click it right now. But look what happens. Go to the 2 that are pending approval and see what options you get under actions. Copy the approval link, right? And so what happens is if there is a quote pending approval, the link available is the approval link. If it has changes that are requested, it's going to go back to its normal editing stage because the quote owner needs to go in and make those changes, okay? So that's how the quotes are going to look. So let's go ahead and grab one of those links for reviewing a quote, Kayla. So one of them that's in pending approval. Copy that link and please open that in a new tab. Okay, so we check this out now. If Kayla were me, because I am actually the approver on this, then you would be able to request changes, right? And so when you request changes, you would be able to, and actually, yeah, you would be able to request changes, and then you type those changes into a text box, okay? And I'm sorry this isn't perfect, because if we were in my account, then we would actually be able to click that button and show you what that looks like, but I'm not able to do that right now. So we'll have to go ahead and we'll go ahead and run it like this, okay? So what we would do is we would click request changes, and then we would enter those changes, and by entering those changes, that's going to put the status into rejected, which is going to trigger that other workflow that's going to tell the quote owner that they have a task to correct that quote, okay? So that's how that part works. So now if you could please go to tasks, Kayla. So if you could go to the tab that you have for settings, and then if you could go to sales and then tasks. Okay, and let's see if you can get my tasks. So change the assignee to Mandy. Right now it's selecting you. Okay. Perfect. And so now if you can scroll down to those bottom tasks. So let's take a look at what happened. So I received a task. If you could click that to open it. Yep. So what's going to happen when you click on that task is it's going to go over to the record, and we're going to see that I have a task to review the associated quote. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is go over to the right, Kayla, and scroll down just a little bit, and you're going to see the quote attached on the side. A little bit more.
There it is.
Yep, there we go. All right, so you've got the quote there. So now what we see, if you hover that actions button again, because it's in the approval stage, again, we can get that approval link and we can go and look at it. Or you can just click on the quote link, and that's where it's going to take you, all right? So now what we're going to do, I am going to go ahead on my side, since I was going to do this live, but I can't. I am actually on this Susan Quas quote. I am going to give feedback. So then we can watch what happens. So now I'm going to go to it, which you can't see. I'm going to request changes. Please update the line items to be XYZ. And then please update the sign date to be 1 week later. Okay, so there's my feedback. So now I'm going to request those changes. Now, if we watch this, so Kayla, if you go back to where the tasks are, so go to sales and tasks, or okay. Yeah, the back button's great. So now what we're going to have to do, y'all, is we're going to have to wait a second so the workflow runs, because since I am the owner of that quote as well as the approver, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but for demoing, it made sense. We're going to go ahead and refresh this task page real quick, Kayla, and then we're going to see what the task looks like for the quote owner when they get tasked to update the quote. So now if you go down to the bottom of that list, changes requested. So now watch this, click on that task. So this would come to the rep who owns the quote. And then if you can click to open, okay. So if we can go ahead and go to the, if you can scroll down a little bit, please, Kayla, on the middle section to actually get to that task for changes requested. There it is, right there in the middle. So look at that. The changes that I typed into the change box, which you couldn't see because my screen share is not working, those are the changes that I told Kayla to make. So now what Kayla could do, because feedback has been given and the quote has been changed in status to rejected, Kayla, let's look at the quote on the right-hand view of the deal record there. Okay, so now changes are requested. So now click that button. Yep. So now we're going to see, we're back at the beginning because she had to go through edit. So Kayla, go ahead and just click the next button until you get to the end. Okay, now you're going to request approval again. This is where our fun workflows for the second approval request come in, because that one that is triggered by a quote being in the pending approval status, we've already used that trigger on this quote. So that workflow will not trigger again. So we need to make another workflow. So Kayla, if you could go ahead and click that request approval. All right. And you can go ahead and click the close button. Okay, now let's go back to your first tab on the left for workflows and take a look at those additional workflows that we built to account for these multiple rounds. Okay, so now we have second pending approval workflow. So could you please click on that? So what did we do here? In our triggers, we made one change, that the approval status is pending approval and that the approval status has ever been rejected. Because what do we know? At some point, if we're in a second round of revisions, when a change was requested, it updated the status to rejected. So we know that it was rejected before. So we want to make sure that we trigger the workflow again. So if we go ahead and go to, if you go ahead and click back to workflows, Kayla, yep. So now what we're going to be able to see is we're going to be able to see the third pending approval. So could you please go ahead and click on that one? Okay, so now what we can see, if we wanted to do this a third time, here's what you need to do. If you could please click that see more, Kayla. So the way that we would condition this, it's on the trigger thing. Yeah. So the way that we would be able to see this, it's at the bottom of the trigger box. It's a little arrow, nope, above that, the top box. Yep. Nope, absolutely. So then what we would do is if we know we're going to do multiple rounds of revisions, then when we're giving our feedback the second time as the quote approver, if we use something like second, writing out or second, so then what we would do is we would put that in our feedback. So then what would trigger this third round of approval would be that we're looking to get approval, that the status has ever been rejected, and that it contains any of the feedback approval itself contains second or second as a number. And again, that's going to send it for approval. So now on the same line, and again, we'll get tasks for all of this. We'll be able to interact in all of the ways that we've already shown you. So now, Kayla, if you could go ahead and go back to workflows one more time. Now let's take a look at what the workflows are going to look like the second time that we are telling. So if we go to the second round of changes requested by approvers, so what are our triggers here? So now what we have is the trigger is that it's rejected and that the text in that approval feedback box contains the word second. So we take the same trigger, we created a way to condition our workflows by using the term second in our approver feedback, and then third and fourth and so on. By doing that, we can use the values there for both of those workflows to tell the approvers and to on the third time and to tell the quote owner on the second time, right? And so then if you go back to workflows real quick, Kayla, we would do the same thing if we needed to have a third round of changes that were requested. So at the top there, third round of changes requested by approvers. Once again, we would identify this by the quote is in pending approve or is in rejected status and that the feedback contains those words. That would enroll again, and that would give that other task out. So that's super cool. So this is how we deal with having multiple rounds of approvers. So we've gone through today. Let's cover this. We turn on the setting. HubSpot automatically creates these three workflows. The workflow is going to set your quote approver. So you'll need to put that in there, whoever you want that to be. It's going to task them when a quote needs approval. It's going to task when that feedback is given. It's going to task the quote owner to go ahead and update that. And then when the quote is finally approved, then it's going to ask the quote owner to send the quote out. Okay, so we've gone through how to do that. And then we also went through how can you further condition the triggers of the workflow so that if there's a second round of revisions that is requested from a quote after a first round has been submitted, then we trigger that workflow again because we have that the quote is in the status of pending approval, but also that it has been in rejected before. And then when we're looking to send that second round of feedback, we include the word second so that it triggers another workflow so that when the second revision is coming through, we trigger that workflow to tell the rep that they need to make a second update to the quote. Okay, so we've covered all of that. Now what we're going to do, if you could please go back to workflows again, we're going to talk about something else. Oh yeah, we also showed you on the task player where you get the task. So if you're the quote owner, you're actually going to get the feedback that was written by the approver in a task. And then we also saw where if you're the approver, you're going to get that as a quote and as a task. And on the right side, the quote's automatically going to be set to the approver link in that format when the quote is in pending approval. So now what do we do when we have multiple people who need to approve? And when we're conditioning who those approvers will be. So what we're going to use in our case study or example here is we're going to base this on somebody who is on a sales team, and we're trying to figure out who the approval will be based on the sales team somebody is on. Okay, so what we're going to start with is, if you scroll down a bit more, Kayla, we have multiple person approver one first approval. Because as y'all see there, I have second approval for them as well. We would go through those same triggers we used and apply the other changes we've made here. So we have the same trigger, right? The quote status is pending approval. That's what gets us into the workflow. Then we have an if-then branch. So if you could please do the see more for me, Kayla. So on one branch, if the deal owner is Jennifer Sinet or Mandy Thompson, we're both on Brian's team, then it will go into that branch. And then on the second one, if it's Kayla Mack or Morgan Chachensky, then we're going to put it in Stefan's team because they're on Stefan's team. So now, if you scroll down a little bit, Kayla, as you can see, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. So we're going to set the approver to Brian for his branch, to Stefan for his branch. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create the tasks. Now, here's where it gets fun. We need to think about what are we going to do to trigger the notification to the second approver to let them know that the first approver has given their feedback. There's a few ways that we can do this, and I decided to do it in this way. So if you could please go to your far right tab that says quotes, Kayla. And then if you can exit out of there, go cancel on the upper left. Thank you much. And then if you go to the settings wheel on the top right. Okay, and then what you're going to do is on the left-hand side, you go to properties under data management. Okay, and then what we're going to do is select an object. We're going to go to deal on the top middle there.
There we go.
Up.
Ooh.
Yep. Nope. There. Okay. Perfect. And then, okay, so now, Kayla, if you could please, the fifth or sixth one down, approval one. So what I went ahead and did is I created a property that's a drop-down select. So if you go ahead and click on that, please. Yep. So it is a drop-down select, and the option is approved or revisions, right? So we set that up, and then will you go to the tab just to the left of that with property settings, please, Kayla? Nope, not there. The tab just to the left, sorry. Nope, the tab, your tab. Yep, perfect. So then what we did is we have this quote info. So we set a custom section. Now, if you're on enterprise or higher, like we are, you can make it so that that only shows up in the left-hand side of the deal if the deal is in contract sent or is in one other stage of the pipeline. I forget which one I chose. If you don't have it, then just leave it there all the time, and you can put it top, bottom, wherever you want it to be. Yeah, if you click that, Kayla, we'll see what my other condition was. Okay, yeah, decision maker bought in or contract sent. So for our HubSpot, this would only show up in that condition, but you can show it at any time if you're in Pro, okay? So then what would happen is we're going to be looking at the task and the quote in the deal record anyways. So on the left-hand side, if I'm approver one, I'm going to choose whether it's approved or rejected. And that is going to be the trigger to tell approver two. So now, if you could please go back over to the tab on the left that has the workflows, Kayla. And I got to say, great job doing this, like demoing through another person. You are killing it right now because this is not easy. So, okay, now we're going to go back to workflows, and we're going to go to multiple person, approver two, first approval. Which I know, lots of words, lots to organize here. Okay, exactly, right down there towards the bottom. Yep, perfect. So now the trigger here is that it is a quote is associated to any deal, and that approval one is known. So now that we know that there is a value for approval one, now we're going to do the same thing. We are going to go ahead and segment this onto Brian's team or Stefan's team. And then if you go ahead and scroll down a little bit there, but the second approver on Brian's team is Eliel, and the second approver on Stefan's team is Aurora. So we're going to set them to be the quote approver. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing and assign a task. And then this is where your internal processes come into play, right? You need to decide, Does the second person actually submit the feedback on the quote, or do they leave it and person one goes back in and does it? So if it was the latter and person one has to come back in, what you would want to do, which I haven't done here, what you would want to do is have a property for approver two. They go through those same steps. And then when that property value is known and there is a quote associated, then you're going to give a task to approver one. And what you might want to do is actually, when that value is noted, rotate back to the original approver by using some if-then branches and then let approver one know. Or if you know who the person is who's going to get notified or tasked, you might have to use some if-then branches, but basically you can set a workflow to let them know, and then they're going to go ahead and add that feedback to the quote so that then we get that over to the rep, right? Okay, and then you could also set if-then branches to, wait 4 hours, see if that feedback has been given, and if it hasn't, then go ahead and remind them again if it's a time-sensitive thing. So we can go wild with our specifications on these workflows here, but we won't for today. So Kayla, the last thing I want to show on this multiple approver bit, so we can move on to how do we make sure that our sales reps get these out the door, because that's a really important thing, right? Okay, so if we go back to workflows, now let's take a look at one more thing. So we're going to go to, actually we'll have to go back up here. Okay. So go to multiple person, go up, yep, go to, wait, up, all the way up. Yep.
That's as far up as I can go.
I don't think this is
multiple person, right? So.
Oh, where did all these unnamed were? Oh yeah, sorry, yep. Multiple person, approver one, second approval. Yep. Okay, so now what we're doing, you're going to see the patterns coming back in from when we did our second approval earlier. So now we're going to have, it is in pending approval and it has ever been rejected, because that tells us it's the second round. And then the exact same things are going to play through. And once again, if we wanted to do a third round, then we could have that the approval feedback includes the word second, and that would condition that third workflow to trigger. Okay, so now if you could please go back to workflows. Okay, so now what we want to do, oh, hold on. So when quotes are approved with follow-up. Oh yeah, I have one more actually. Could you go up? Oh yeah, go to second round of changes to approvers.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry, it's down at the bottom of your list. My apologies. Okay, so one thing we want to do, if the quote status is rejected and we have the feedback of second, we want to clear the property value for the first approver. That way the first approver can mark it again, okay? So we want to clear that value so that we know before they put their feedback in and get that task, so that property is available again to be selected to trigger the workflow for the second person, okay? So, okay, we can go ahead and go back to workflows. I love it, love it. Okay, so now we can go to that one where we had approved. I think it's down a little bit further, Kayla. Okay, quotes are approved with follow-up. So what do we do if we want to make sure that our sales reps are getting those quotes out the door? It's just up from where you are right now. Okay, so I know there's a huge list of them and you did not make those names. Like, your job is very hard right now and I appreciate it. Okay, so when I accept a quote as an approver, it's going to move it to approved. So this is going to be triggered by a quote being in approved status. Then we're going to give a task to the quote owner, the rep, to get that quote out the door. But then what we did, if you scroll down a little bit here, Kayla, then what we did is we went ahead and set a delay for 4 hours. And then we're going to use an if-then branch to see if our rep has actually sent this. So if you could click the see more, here's what we had to do here. Number one, we had to say, quote associated to engagement is any engagement where the email subject, so here's what we would have to have, is an internal process that says when you send a quote, you must use the word quote, proposal, SOW, contract, whatever it is, in the subject line and or in the body. Okay, so that's how this would work. You would have to have those set up. And then don't scroll down anymore yet. We're going to go through these conditions a little bit more. So then what we're going to do is we're going to give a time limit, right? So if you see this, it's going to say has been updated in the last, and I don't know why it's not showing up. It's the last 0.25, actually, could you please click on that condition, Kayla? So if you click where it says email subject has been, yep, perfect. Okay, and then if you could click that, see more on the right-hand side. Okay, so, and then if you click on the condition for email subject at the bottom of that, yep. Okay, so it has been updated in the last, oops, it updated for where is that? So if you could put 0.25 and then update that filter, perfect. Now, why do we want this that way? And then you can go ahead and save that. The reason we want it that way is because, you know, this person, and then if you could do the see more in the middle again, because it shut that one. Thank you. Because what's going to happen is maybe we've emailed with this person about a quote previously. So we don't want to trigger, we don't want to assume that someone has sent this when they haven't. So we want to make sure that that language has been used in an email in the last 4 hours. That way we can make it so that we ensure that we get this quote sent. We only ping the rep again if they actually haven't sent it out. So what this is doing is saying, hey, in the last 6 hours, has an email been sent between these two, between the rep and the prospect with a subject line or an email body that includes the word quote or proposal? And if one has not been sent, if you scroll down a little bit now, Kayla, please. If one has not been sent, then we're going to send an in-app notification letting the rep know that the quote is ready to be sent and that they need to get it out the door. So that's how we can control for that part of it, which is super fun and exciting because we make sure to check on the quote and that it got sent out the door. So that is all of the steps that we had. So what I want to do is I do want to see, does anybody out there have any questions about this, how it works, how to do it, any questions at all, or anything else that you'd like to ask not related to this particular workflow on how to do something else in HubSpot? We are here and we are all ears for the questions that you have. And I will summarize one more time. If you could please, Kayla, go to the quotes tab while we're seeing if anyone has any questions. I'm going to do a high level overview of what we did here. So what we did here today, again, we turned on that all quotes need approvals. That created 3 workflows. We created a custom property for multiple approvers so that the first approver can check when they're done, and that'll trigger a workflow for the second approver. Then what we also took a look at is how we interface with quotes, right? So this one that's pending approval, if Kayla were to click on the one pending approval, it would go to the approvers page. So, and yep, we can go ahead and do that and click on that one. So it goes to the approvers page. I could either click approve and publish if I have no changes, or if I have changes, I click request changes. When I click request changes, I get a little text box. I put my text in there. If it's a second round of revisions, I use the word second. If it's a third, I use the word third. And that's going to trigger a workflow to let the quote owner know that they need to make those changes. Then we set things up with special conditions so that if it's a second round of revisions, a second request for edits, a second or third set of approvals, that we trigger all of those workflows. And then Kayla, if you could please go to one of the tabs that says Susan Quas demo spot deal. We also showed you, if you click the back button on your browser here, or actually leave it there. Just kidding. Okay, that's perfect. We also show you how the tasks come through. So if it's a task asking for approval, it just says that it's asking for approval. If it's a task that needs feedback, then I think we have one down there that should need feedback, Kayla, on the activity stream. Then it's actually going to give you the feedback that you have, exactly that changes requested one. It comes in there. And then on the right-hand side, you're going to have the quote associated. If the quote is in pending approval, then we can go ahead and we can, and you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and approve that quote, because then what we can do is we'll actually be able to take a look at what happens, what the task looks like when the quote is approved. So let me go ahead. I have to request approval one more time. And I'm going to go ahead and give the approval, approve and publish. So then in a second, Kayla, you're going to be able to refresh your screen and you'll actually be able to see the pending approvals. So let's go ahead and give that a second. Go ahead and refresh. Okay. And then if you scroll down, there should be a approval sent. You might have to refresh again. And you might want to just go to sales and tasks
Okay.
to actually see the task. Oh, wait. Yeah, go there. Yep, go to tasks. Perfect. And go all the way down to the bottom. And now we can see quote approved. So if we click on that quote approved task, there we go. You might have to scroll to find the quote approved task.
There it is.
Okay, so there we go. Quote approved. Your quote has been published. You can now send it to your customers. And then if you go over to the right-hand side where the quote is, Kayla, you'll see that now if you have a copy button there. Because now if you click that copy button, yep, copy the link, and then please open that in a new tab. Then we're going to have the live quote that Susan Quast, we could send this to her, and she'd be able to sign this quote live. So that's how we go through the approval process. Super helpful if you have quotes that need approval. We've accounted here for multiple approvers. We've accounted here for multiple rounds of revisions, and we're also following up with sales to make sure that they get things out the door. So super fun. I feel like we accomplished a lot. So I want to go ahead and continue to see if anybody has any questions.
It looks like we do have one question. And it says,
Awesome.
is there a way to require an e-signature from an internal team member when they approve the quote?
An internal signature from a team member. That's a great question. Let me see 1 second how I would do that. And I'm sad I cannot be changing or sharing my screen right now, but that's okay. And it looks like my updating in the last 0.25 days might not be working. So you might have to do that it's been updated in the last full day. And we might have to find another condition for checking. I just noticed that, Kayla. I didn't notice it last night, but okay. Can we require an internal signature? So we can add, so here's the deal. You can't ask for a signature, I do not believe, until a quote has been approved. So I'm not sure. What we would have to do there is probably hook in a system like DocuSign. And so we would have to launch a document, a specific template. So you can actually launch a template. So you would create a template in DocuSign and you would map all the properties, whatever information you need to it. You'd deploy that from the right-hand side of the deal record in HubSpot. And when your approval was done, you would sign that. And then in your workflow, what you would do is say, you would, instead of triggering the second requester based on that custom property being marked, you would trigger it based on that DocuSign being completed. And so you would have the status of the document and a name in the title. So you'd have to keep a consistent title for your internal approvals. So your workflow would be triggered by when, it's a quote-based workflow that when the DocuSign, associated to that deal, or it could be a deal-based quote, I think a deal-based would be the best one. So when the DocuSign is done on that deal that has that title, then you would task out the second approver, and then that would also affix your signed approval to your deal record. So yes, that absolutely can be done.
Very cool. I have to say, I know I've fumbled through the screens a little bit there, but in going through that step by step, it was super easy to see. I mean, this is essentially an automated, very efficient game of telephone where it's like, I did something and now it needs to go to someone else. And instead of emailing someone or slacking someone and saying, hey, can you check this out? Hey, can you approve this? Hey, I need requests made. It's all automated and it makes it so efficient. It's really, really cool. I like that.
Absolutely. 110%. That is exactly what it is like. I love that because I use that term a lot. It's like you daisy chain these things together and you can make a whole bunch of things happen that where a person used to have to do, like that approver, right? They'd have to get their approval, their request, they put in their stuff, they send an email to somebody else, they drag it to a certain status, blah, blah, blah. Now they do their approval. They click one little property that's right there on the left-hand side for them that says needs revisions. And then that sets off the next set of motions. I don't have to email Kayla and tell her. I don't have to update anything manually. I check that one. I do what I have to do, which is give my feedback. And then I check one box, and that is all I have to do. I go from 5 to 7 steps to 2. And while that might not seem like a lot one time, if I do this 500 times a year, and every time I do it, it saves me 5 minutes, that's a lot of freaking time a year, okay? I could do like 3 projects in that time. So it really does, it does all add up. And so that's what I encourage you when you're working on these automations. There's nothing too small to automate. Just be sure when you're doing this. My recommendation to everybody, we do this internally, build your automations per function on something like Lucidchart or Miro so that as you add to it, and also document it in a document. So have a visual and then have a document. These are the triggers, these are the conditions, this is what this workflow does. That way, when you have a new member to your team or you plug another process into your overall processes, you're going to have to update some things, right? You're going to have to think about, what were my triggers here? What were my conditions there? Does adding this new thing affect these other 5 workflows? So can I do something that wouldn't affect those other 5 workflows, or do I need to go update those other 5 workflows too? So make sure, because you can do such sprawling automation, and even small things that take 1 minute are worth it. If you do them 500 times a year, that is 500 minutes, okay? We're talking about 8+ hours there, right? And so we want to make sure that we do those things, but map everything so that you can maintain it, because we see that all the time. Nobody is maintaining or documenting the systems. We see instances that have hundreds of workflows, and they double up on things. They conflict with each other. You have folders where you can organize these things. So use those and do so. But we are at time. This has been so fun and awesome. Please direct message Kayla or myself. Go to the Digital Reach website and chat us however you want to get us that information. We are standing up a landing page for this podcast now, so that should be ready by next week, so that we have a form where you can submit the things that you want to hear about. And know that this podcast is 3 separate segments. So we're going to be doing live problem solving, but we also have other members of the HubSpot team here at Digital Reach who are total experts. We've got Stepan and Karen, who will probably be talking HubSpot and sports. And then we have Steven and Josh as well. So Steven is our head of content marketing, so he knows and is a champion of inbound and loves what HubSpot can do for inbound. And Joshua is one of our HubSpot account managers, so he has a lot of knowledge, sees a lot of HubSpot instances, and talks to a lot of people about HubSpot. So thank you for joining us. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I promise you my screen share was working last week. I'm going to figure out why it wasn't. And next time, either Kayla's going to master the art of being the demoer and is going to become the queen of HubSpot at Digital Reach herself, or we'll get the screen share working. But Kayla, thank you. This has been a blast.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Thanks for everyone who joined, and thanks for everything that you showed us today, Mandy.
All right. Thanks, Kayla.
All right. Bye.